It's believed that stars are the result of dust and gas particles in clouds. We call such a cloud a nebula, and these particles are attracted to each other due to gravity. The cloud becomes hotter and more dense until fusion starts to occur. The star will remain stable so long as the outward pressure from fusion and the force of gravity pulling inward remain balanced. We say it's in the main sequence stage of its life. When a star dies, the outward pressure increases, which causes it to expand. This turns it into a red giant if it's a star of a similar size to our Sun, or a super red giant if it's much bigger. A red giant will then collapse once all the fuel for fusion has run out, leaving a white dwarf, and then a black dwarf once it's cooled. A super red giant explodes. We say it's gone supernova, leaving a very dense neutron star at the center, or an even more dense body that causes a black hole there. The outer layers of the supernova move away, forming new nebulae from which new stars could be made. Nuclei fuse together to make heavier elements. Some of these could only be made as a result of the huge amount of energy that's released from a supernova. Luminosity of a star is just the term we give to its total power output in watts. It's given by Stefan's law. L in watts, or power in watts, equals the Stefan constant times the area of the star, so 4 pi r squared, times its surface temperature in Kelvin to the power of 4. For the sake of physics, we can treat stars as perfect black bodies. We assume that they emit and absorb all wavelengths of light equally. This allows us to draw this graph of energy emitted against wavelength. We can see that it increases with a shorter wavelength because, well, shorter wavelength means higher frequency, which means that the waves have more energy. But it does reach a peak and then comes back down. According to classical physics, this energy should carry on increasing with shorter wavelength. But this implies that a star has infinite energy to give out, which is impossible, and that's because of some quantum mechanics malarkey. As it happens at around ultraviolet wavelengths, this is called the UV catastrophe. The wavelength that emits with the highest energy we call lambda peak. The hotter the temperature, the shorter this wavelength is, and the higher the peak. This peak wavelength is given by Wien's law. Wavelength times temperature in Kelvin equals Wien's constant, which is 0.0029. We can draw a Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, just a graph of luminosity against temperature to show what stars exist out there. Just remember that temperature decreases as you go along the x-axis. Main sequence stars follow this line here. Luminosity follows temperature, which is what we would expect. White dwarfs are small but hot, while red giants are huge and relatively cool, so they occupy the spaces above and below the line. Astronomical distances are so large that we usually use the unit parsec instead of meters. It's short for parallax second. This second isn't a time though, but it's a 60th of a degree, which is what we call an arc second. 1 parsec is the distance at which 1 AU subtends 1 arc second, 1 AU being 1 astronomical unit, which is the mean radius of the Earth's orbit around the Sun. We can also use the light year instead. That's the distance light travels in 1 year. We have a good idea of what wavelengths of light are emitted from stars. However, when we look at distant stars and galaxies, these wavelengths appear longer. They're shifted towards the red end of the spectrum. The light has been redshifted. Much like when the pitch of an ambulance siren drops when it's moving away from you, like that shows that the galaxies must also be moving away from us. And this is the case in every direction we look. Not only that though, the light from more distant galaxies is even more redshifted, suggesting they're moving faster away from us, receding faster, we say, at a faster rate. This implies that if we go back in time, all of these galaxies appear to have originated from the same point in space. This is therefore used as evidence for the Big Bang Theory and that the observable universe is still expanding. The other piece of evidence for it is CMBR, cosmic microwave background radiation. Outer space might look dark, but we can detect microwave radiation being emitted from very far away from all directions. This could be a result of matter still cooling down. So it seems we're looking at the edge of the Big Bang. We can give the amount of redshift or Doppler shift a number. This is equal to the recessional speed divided by the speed of light, and it so happens it's pretty much equal to the change in frequency or wavelength divided by the original value. The shift in wavelength can be seen on the emission spectrum for a star. Characteristic wavelengths we observe emitted from gases here on Earth are generally shifted to the longer red end. Sometimes a line will appear to be split in two though. This can be due to a binary star system. Two stars that are trying to orbit around each other, so end up just orbiting around a common point between them. So we have different redshift for both producing two separate lines. Twice every orbit, the lines recombine into one. The Hubble graph is just a graph of the recessional velocities of all the observable galaxies against their distance. They're proportional, which is why the Big Bang Theory is widely accepted. Making an equation, we say that V is equal to H0d, where H0 is the Hubble constant, the gradient of the graph. This has the unit seconds to the -1, therefore the reciprocal of this gives us seconds, the value of which in theory is the age of the universe. However, often the graph won't be in meters per second and meters, it'll be in kilometers per second and megaparsecs. If you're asked to calculate H0 in seconds to the -1, you'll have to convert these first. So I hope you found that helpful. Leave a like and a comment if you did, and don't forget to check out our revision app to help you test your knowledge, and I'll see you next time.